This here is Disturbing Chuusa, an adorable mouse-looking creature that can be an absolute menace on the current meta. And why is that? Because if you look at his ability, while he's tapped down, neither player can cast a spell, which means it can shut down some very important maneuvers for our opponent. So this video is going to highlight why. And I chose to utilize him in a shell that we may have seen before, which is my Firewater Exile list. But I did make some additional cuts because I wanted to put in Top Gear Start Dash because it makes your first fire creature each turn cost one less, which means that you can go turn 2 Start Dash into Chuusa, and then you can follow that up with something like a turn 4 Katsu King, which allows you to maybe speed attack into something. It can stack itself off and then become his big side and allow you to triple break, in addition to Chuusa's ability to lock down your opponent's spells and their important triggers. If you want to see a more detailed breakdown of the original Firewater list, check out my previous video on it. And yeah, let's go ahead and check out why Chuusa is a menace on the meta. So if we look at my starting hand here, we see we have the dream of turn 2 Start Dash into turn 3 Chuusa, and we're going first, which makes the dream a little bit more of a possibility, assuming our opponent is playing something that can be useful against. And with their first mana, we can see that they're 4-color Wilhelm, most likely. And if we look at a basic 4-color Wilhelm list, you see they have spells like Don, which can be useful for getting creatures off the board. They have Fairy Shower, which allows them to fix their hand, potentially find them a nice spell or creature to cast, and then puts another card into the mana zone. And then they have Hyper Special Ryusei Hole, which is, I've often said, is arguably the strongest spell in the game for its flexibility. And they have Soul Swap, which allows them to functionally get something on the board that's big and dangerous before you're ready for it, or slow us down by getting something off of the board. And Chuusa can shut down all of that as long as it can get tapped, which is our aim here, especially because we're going first and they didn't have the turn 1 May to get on the board quickly. So our opponent has turn 2 Ramp, no problem, no problem. And we go ahead and put down Chuusa and we tell them to deal with it. And the only thing that they can do to remove it is by playing Don, which they don't have, which means that Chuusa is free to rain terror on our opponent's face. We don't have a high impact follow-up here, but at the very least, Chuusa lives and he starts breaking shields, and there's really nothing our opponent can do about it because his floating effect or his continuous effect, or however you want to describe it, is active right now. So our opponent just has to sit there and take it. And we play Kari. So that way we can just finish off the game right here with a nice swift double break, as long as we don't mess up and swing with Chuusa after Kari. So in this game, another game going first, and our opponent plays Hide and Seek as their first mana, and which gives us a lot of information very quickly because it kind of gives us an idea of what they're playing, even though we don't have a full scale of everything because they're masking as Stall. Stall doesn't play Darkness. And so that kind of rules that out. It means they're trying to mask as maybe something like Water Darkness Wedding Gate, which if we look at a sample list here, we can kind of see that the spells to look out for is mainly Wedding Gate itself. It allows them to mana cheat and get their big dangerous things out on the board. However, Chuusa can stop that, and as long as we can establish Chuusa, then the world is our oyster. We get Kari on the board, swing, and then Chuusa, it's time for him to be unleashed onto this world one more time. And they play Emerald, which is pretty much like the key indicator to confirm that it is indeed Wedding Gate, because they play this to set Wedding Gate down onto the board. That way, when you break into it, they don't have to hard cast it later. So as long as we can establish Chuusa, and we have the backup with Katsu King, because Katsu King can attack into Emerald with his front side to allow Chuusa to get in unopposed. So we set the other card down, put down Chuusa, and then tell our opponent to deal with it. Now they make an interesting play here is that they set their second hide and seek and then they use hide and seek, but Chuusa, the god, the goat, dodges it successfully. So we just put it back down on the board one more time and tell them once again to deal with it. Now, however, they're getting ready to go to their 6 mana, and they also play Emerald, which we can likely deduce is Wedding Gate. And it kind of comes down to if they have an additional Wedding Gate in their hand. Usually when they choose to play Emerald, they probably set their only one in hand, more likely than not, and they try to preserve their other big things like the card draw or their angels to come down with it. So it kind of just comes down to this turn. If they have it, if they have it. If they don't, then we likely win the game. So they play some more card draw, and we can see another Wedding Gate go into their hand. And now we're kind of just off to the races. Katsu King comes down, takes out the Emerald. The Chuusa swings, pops the shield. Likely the Wedding Gate that they can no longer cast. Kari swings in, double breaks, and our opponent really can't do anything. So in this game here, going first once again, and we also have the dream of the turn 2 start dash into the turn 3 Chuusa. However, if this is a matchup where Chuusa isn't necessary, there's always a backup plan of the Robin Hood. But this is a Chuusa showcase video, so of course this particular game is going to be useful for Chuusa to come along. So in-world doesn't give us a whole lot of information here, so we still kind of just go forth with setting the start dash turn 2 and trying to gather a little more information from our opponent. They are presenting themselves to be in light water nature stall, but we still don't have enough information to confirm that or not. And so just this little bit of information here with the Ragnarok the clock going into the mana zone kind of tells us that they are indeed light water nature stall, because this is the only deck that plays these combination of cards that's popular right now. So that's kind of where my mind went to. And if we look at a base light water nature stall list, we once again see the Don Don and the Fairy Shower similar to the 4-color Wilhelm list. But in addition to that, they play stuff like Hyperspatial Green White Hole, which allows them to set a card from their hand as mana, and which means that they can set some of these dangerous shield triggers such as Don Don or DNA Spark or Soul Swap. DNA Spark especially, because it allows them to add additional shields if it comes down at a decent time. So Chuusa can shut all of this down. Plan in place is to make sure that we can get it down successfully, especially try to get it down before Perfect Madonna shows up, because Chuusa has to attack every turn, which means you can't keep it back for a turn to try to maneuver around Perfect Madonna. So if they establish Madonna, then Chuusa becomes ineffective, but that means our opponent still has to waste many turns and many resources trying to deal with Chuusa, because they know that if Chuusa attacks, then their game is over. As we can see here, they have to use the Don Don to find something to get the Chuusa back on the board. So we just keep putting the Chuusa on the board and tell them to deal with it. And hopefully they can no longer deal with it before the Madonna comes down. So once again, another Don Don into the Green White Hole selection to once again put Chuusa back in his hand. It's like deja vu all over again. So then I choose to put the Robin Great down so I can play both cards in my hand. Play the Chuusa and the Galenia right behind it, and we get the Kari ready to roll. Our opponent puts down the Green White Hole, they set a Green White Hole, and now once again they have to expend resources just to make sure that the Chuusa can no longer attack. So we don't have to do anything, we just got to make sure try to get our opponents down low on resources, and that way they can no longer deal with the Chuusa. So I put down the Katsu King, and we have the backup to make sure that it can transform into its big side. Fairy Shower comes up with nothing. So Chuusa is alive, our opponent can no longer deal with it, and he's ready to rain terror all over our opponent's head. The key here is to make sure that you just attack with Chuusa first to get him tapped down, and then off to the races. And the only out to them stopping Chuusa's reign of terror is trying to get a Ragnarok into their shields. However, they have 2 here. If we look at the sample list one more time, 2 is here, which means that these could be the only 2. They could play more, but it's also necessary to just keep it in mind, because if it is this shield here, that's why I attacked the way that I did. I didn't want the Ragnarok to show up early, because on the next turn it can attack into Chuusa, and then the shields would be live for spells. So if it was Ragnarok set, then I attacked into that shield last and get maximum value out of the attacks. And then my opponent plays Michelangelo down, which allows them to look at the top 3 and set one as a shield and the rest go into the hand. Maybe they found the Ragnarok, maybe they didn't. So I put the start dash down and then evolve that into Kari to draw. And then the key here, once again, just make sure you don't attack with the Chuusa after everything else swings, and that's all she wrote. Chuusa the Menace coming through for your boy. Those series of games got me to top 100 for the day, which allowed me to get my successful Duel Masters Legend ranking for the season, which means I get max prize support at the end of the season. So shout outs to Chuusa for giving me that one more time. And yeah, that'll do it for me. Hope you enjoyed this little showcase of Chuusa the Menace, and I'll catch you next time. Peace. Be easy.